So, in this short video, I want to take a quick look both at the new teaser for the Song of the Welkin Moon and the new web event. At first, I didn't plan to make a video about this teaser, but then they also released the new web event, so I decided to put these two together and make a video about both. As for the teaser, well, there isn't really that much that I can add to the teaser that hasn't already been said by other people, so I'll make this quick. Also, just for this part at the very beginning, I wanted to say that actually, this page that was accidentally leaked by Hoyoverse in the game launcher has been updated, and now in the original Welkin Moon web event you can see this shattered sky revealing the real sky behind the false firmament. So yeah, this was actually updated, but as far as I can tell there are no changes to the original web event and they just added the new one. But now let's look at the teaser. So this is called the Song of the Welkin Moon teaser, Moonlit Ballad of the Night. Obviously hinting at the new version, which is called the Song of the Welkin Moon, and it's also the name of all the new Archon quests that will be in the new version. And actually in version 5.8 we'll already get a prelude for this. But without further ado, let's start.
You wish to hear a story of the moon? That tale begins long, long ago.
So the one who talks at the very beginning is Nicole, who we knew for quite a long time already, so it's nice to finally get her reveal later in the teaser, but I will talk more about her once she actually shows up. But this on the screen right now is obviously Varka, as he was hinted at many times, and he's supposed to be one of the first characters we meet in Not Cry, as was said by the developers in the developer discussion. And in his hand is obviously the Wolf's Gravestone, which is his weapon, and the weapon's lore is closely tied to him, so it makes sense that he has this. And this is Aino. We've seen her recently in the trailer for the new version, so she's probably the one who either created or rather more likely repaired or remade Inefa, so she's likely going to be a playable character as well.
Nefa's starting her story already.
And Nefer is a character that we will also see later. It seems like she is talking about the moons and telling a story about them. It's actually Nicole who was talking before in the teaser, but maybe Nefer is talking about the same story. So even though her appearance doesn't seem like it, she may be someone who is somehow connected to the moon, or at least she is knowledgeable about it.
Thanks for the heads up.
And right here you can see the Krumkake shop. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Anyway, here is sitting Durin, and if you zoom closely, you can see that right here, this should be his pyrovision. And also, this looks like some sort of wings. His whole attire reminds me very much of the Festering Desire, which is the sword that's connected to Dragon's Spine Durin, and so it makes sense that he's similar to it. He also has some sort of tail, and later in the teaser, it's hinted that he maybe has a bit of personality conflict between Mini Durin from Simulanka and the actual Durin from Dragon's Spine, since they kind of fused. And later in his mind, you see the scary eyes, so it seems like they wanted to hint at some sort of potential interpersonal conflict. There, this character right here, lying on the couch, is called Yahoda. I hope that's how it's pronounced, because in my language that's how it's pronounced and it straight up means strawberry. So I think that could be it. But I've also heard other people that say that in other similar languages, the word, although a bit different, may mean something similar, so it's hard to say how it's supposed to be pronounced. Maybe it's just something like Jahoda or Yagoda, hard to say. Anyway, right next to her is standing Inefa, who we already know from the trailer, and she will soon become playable, so no need to talk about her too much.
The moon's a long way off. We might go hungry, but at least we have plenty of time. Hey kid, that headpiece of yours is pretty unique. Who designed it? Could you hook me up?
And here is the part I was talking about before, with the eyes. Anyway, it's interesting to see Durin right here, since it doesn't seem like Yahoda knows much about him. Maybe the Wanderer brought him here, but it's hard to say because they aren't showcased together. And the Wanderer obviously has his own agenda with Dottore and all, but I'll talk about that later.
In that era, there was no boundary between life and death. Willpower flowed.
These are obviously the three Moon Sisters, although the two sisters are showcased with the horn on their head, but this Moon Sister looks more like some sort of water creature or something like that.
freely among countless beings. The primordial being that once ruled this planet made 3 moons rise.
So right here it talks about the primordial being that once ruled this planet, which means that it cannot be the heavenly principles because they still rule the planet, technically. So it probably hints at Nibelung, who was the first one who ruled the planet, and even the later dialogue hints at him. So it's probably talking about him, but we didn't know before that he used the earth from the planet to create the moons. This is news to us, so it seems like the 3 moons predate even the heavenly principles, which may actually be connected to their demise, since the heavenly principles wanted to establish their own new rule over Teyvat.
From the earth. It was not until the funerary year.
Yeah, I wanted to let the line play because this is very important. This on the screen is the new character Flint, who represents the Light Keepers. What's more important was at least lore-wise, was the line that was mentioned right here, which talked about the funerary year, which is very important to Genshin because it set up how a passage is named in the Forbidden Text before Sun and Moon, and it talks about the time when the war was rekindled because the second Throne of Heavens came, which probably hits at Nibelung and his War of Vengeance, and this together probably means that there is a chance that Nibelung could have been the second descender, or rather there is a high chance that he was the second who came. It's hard to say if that means the second descender, but anyway. And it's also very interesting they straight up reference before Sun and Moon, because I don't think that has been done before.
That the primordial voice once again cried out in the darkness.
My lady.
Now, this is obviously Marionette or Sandrone. For a long time there has been a very popular theory in the lore circles that theorize that she may be Mary-Anne Guillotine, and that seems to be very likely even in this teaser, because it seems like her haircut fits perfectly. Even her attire kind of seems Fontanian, and there is a theory that suggests that she may be actually a doll or something created by Elaine, who was her brother of Narsenkreuz Institute, which they both grew up in, and he may have constructed both the doll and the robot, and that way kept her alive, because, spoiler alert, Mary-Anne died in the past, and we know that Elaine loved her very much before that, so her death must have been devastating for him. So that could have meant that he wanted to construct a straight-up copy of her, which he could have achieved, and that could be Marionette. Anyway, we don't know much about Elaine and his late life, because we only know it up to a certain point, and then it kind of becomes fuzzy. So there is a very high probability in my mind that he created Marionette, or that she's at least somehow, some way connected to Elaine Guillotine or Marianne Guillotine.
The Frostmoon Scions again. A laughably futile rebellion.
Oh, pale white Frostmoon, I, your loyal emissary, and scion of Hyperborea.
Now, this is Lauma. We have seen her before in the previous teaser. She actually talks about Hyperborea here, which was the first root cycle, as René de Petrichor described it, again connected to the Narsenkreuz Ordo and Narsenkreuz Institute, which is connected to Marionette, probably. So it's interesting that we have two such references here, possibly. Lauma is a fairy-like woodland spirit and guardian spirit of orphans in Eastern Baltic mythology. So from this we can guess some of Notkrai's inspirations, which were revealed to us before, so it's no surprise, but it's still cool to get such a confirmation. Also, it's pretty interesting that they did actually bring up Hyperborea, since aside from it being a root cycle, as René de Petrichor described it, it's also supposed to be the first root cycle, which means that it's probably one of the oldest, if not the oldest, human civilization. According to René, it's the oldest part of the Samsaras. And we also know that its ruins are supposed to be somewhere near Notkraj, or even in Notkraj, so maybe we'll get to explore them. And somewhere in there was supposed to be the Voyager, which is a very important figure in the lore, so maybe we'll actually get to learn more about that legendary figure.
Beseech you to cast down your gaze from the celestial dome above. May your gentle tears pierce the frigid night, and grant us, the forsaken and forgotten, your guiding light.
Anyway, she's obviously speaking about the Frostmoon here, if I forgot to mention that, since she is supposed to be one of the Frostmoon Scions. And it seems like the Frostmoon may be the last moon of the three that is still present to this day.
You didn't come here for the story, did you?
Huh. Finished already, huh?
No. It's just a greater storyteller than myself has come. Now,
Anyway, that right here was Nefer. We don't know anything about her, but she looks a lot like she could be from Sumeru or maybe even Natlan, but more like Sumeru since her name is a Egyptian hieroglyph for beautiful or perfect, if I'm not wrong. And she also resembles very much in her design the Sumeru desert style, so maybe she's someone from there. But as I said before in the teaser, she may know something about the moons, so maybe there is some connection between her and the moons.
Beyond the moonlight's reach, an ancient shadow brandishes its haunting claws.
Now, this is Nicole. I really didn't expect her to look like this, but I think it makes sense. She has her wings right here, which are probably the remains of her being a Seelie, or rather an angel, which are both the same things right now, but anyway. We learned from Skirk that she witnessed the self-destruction of her own race, which means that she was one of the angels before the catastrophe occurred, and now she lives in the form of a human. We also know that she is mute for some reason, as Wolfie explained to us in the Imaginarium Theater. She also likes to speak in people's heads, since obviously she can speak. And she's one of the Hexen Circle, which means that Alice knows her well, and the friend she talks about later in the teaser is probably her. Also, another interesting thing about her is that she's apparently unaffected by the Irminsul manipulation, since she talked about it to us before.
Taking aim at the stars.
You're right. I came here for the moon.
Now, this, I don't have the subtitles on right here, but when Varka says that he came here for the moon, there is Mondstadt written in the subtitles, which could hint at Mondstadt being the moon city in translation. There could be some hidden meaning about this name that we don't know yet, and maybe we will finally learn the meaning of that. Also, there are a lot of wolves in Mondstadt, and we know that they are connected to the moon, as was illustrated in the Moonlit Bamboo Forest and such. So maybe Varka is there because of that ancient connection between Mondstadt and the moon.
I'm afraid you have the wrong person. Now, be gone.
This was Flint's again, and by the way, this tombstone is pretty interesting since I will try to put the translation on the screen right now, but it probably talks about some of his ancestors, or rather his ancestor. That could be either his father or someone else close to him, which means that his storyline could be connected to some of his descendants that were also Lightkeepers.
In the water, the future mirrors the past. The veil of lies is slipping. Time is short. The moon's fall is nigh.
Now, this is Columbina, as we all know, and the lines she said right here were pretty interesting, especially the one about the water mirroring the past, since later in the teaser we can see the Wanderer and his reflection in the water reflecting his life as Scaramouche, but she may also be hinting at something else that we don't know about yet. Also, she says that the moon's fall is nigh, which was hinted at multiple times, that the last moon will also die and a new moon will rise, and she may be connected to it, as we will see later in the web event. Also, I want to quickly mention that there are a lot of theories about who she actually may be. A lot of people thought in the past that she actually may be a Seelie, which may still be true, but doesn't really seem to be the case, since she is called the Moon Maiden in this teaser, which means that she's probably actually some kind of being connected to the moon.
Here
at last. And things look even messier than last time.
Anyway, that was Alice, and now there is Albedo, who I don't know what his purpose in Not Cry will be, but anyway, he's here for some reason. We see that it's not the fake Albedo, but the real one, as the fakes should be dead by now. Anyway, it seems like he's about to do something important here with Alice, which may involve alchemy or something like that. Also, again, Durin is here as well, and Wanderer too, so everyone who is connected to Durin is kind of here, so it may have something to do with him as well.
Well, Miss Alice, shall we begin?
There's no rush, and I'd like to...
Well, we can see her pyrovision right here pretty clearly. Anyway, the three names on this paper are connected to the Moon Sisters, most likely, since their names are a bit different here, but it seems like since there are three of them and they are at least a bit similar, that it may actually be the real Moon Sisters names, or maybe just different names for the same Moon Sisters. Hard to say. Anyway, in my opinion, the first one refers to Arya. The second one is Solnari, but could refer to Sonnet, or it could also refer to Rerir, which is one of the five sinners, and is also called Rerir of Solnari, which could be pretty interesting if he's somehow connected to the Vile Hunt. And then there is Canon, which we don't know really much about, but it's theorized that she could be the last living moon.
Catch up with an old friend first. And you, young man?
Let's part ways here. I have an old score of my own to settle.
Anyway, as I said before, you could see Scaramuche's reflection in here, which is actually interesting since Columbina talked about the reflections of the past and so on. Wanderer's reason for being here seems pretty clear to me, since he already said in past many times that he wants to settle the score with Dottore for the betrayals and such. So since we know that Dottore is right now in Not Cry, he probably wants to deal with him, and that's pretty much it for the teaser. Anyway, this turned out to be a bit longer than expected, but right now let's take a look at the web event. So there isn't really that much to talk about here. Right here we can see the whole Not Cry map, which is pretty cool, but not really anything I can say to this lore-wise. This is the Paha Isle, which should be the Fatui stronghold in here. It looks more like some kind of city or some kind of factory, but it also interestingly has the shape similar to a moon. If you look at this is like a half globe, and the other half could be underground, but maybe that's again just me reaching. Then there is the second half of the islands. Right here we can see the Blue Ember Lake, which looks like a pretty nice and cozy location. There is some kind of ship that resembles a whale, but that's about all I can say about it for now. Then there is the Nasha town, which was interestingly enough mentioned multiple times throughout the game until now. First time mentioned by Helka in one of the recent events. Then it was interestingly enough mentioned again by Yaemiko as an Elysium, which is referenced also here in the name. It should be home to the Voynich Guild if I'm not wrong, which is like a merchant guild. Then there is the Hisi Island, which should be home to the Frostmoon Scions. So it seems like this is where the Frostmoon Scions eventually took refuge after the events of the Long Night's Oath artifact set. Anyway, then this part talks about the Paha Isle, which is the stronghold of the Fatui, and talks also about the Pale Star Edict, which was used to summon all the Fatui Harbingers, or rather some of the Fatui Harbingers here to Not Cry. This is the interesting part, because Columbina is right here, and she is revealed to be the idol of the new moon, which means that she is probably supposed to become the new rising moon, and it's probably connected to Fatui's overarching plan. Anyway, as we saw even previously in the developer discussion, the statues of the Seven, or rather some of them, are now caged in a prison of steel. So the Fatui are probably trying to harness the power of the statue somehow. There we have a brief summary of the Hisi Island and the Frostmoon Scions, but also they mentioned the Golden City, which is also called Hyperborea, and I already talked about it a bit in the teaser. And here we can actually get a look at the statue of the Seven, or rather a moon statue, or whatever we should call it. That's right here, probably in the original state, not being experimented on by the Fatui. Then here is a bit of information about Nasha Town, but it mostly talks about the riches, lies and schemes that we already heard about from Liban and such, so nothing really new. But that's about it for the factions. Right now there is also some interesting information about what I think is Nibelung, because this mentions now nameless ruler who raised the heavenly moons, and as I already said in the teaser, I think that refers to Nibelung. It also talks about one of the fallen moons, as I interpret it, and they say right here that it became the refuge of the exiles of the far north, which are probably the Frostmoon Scions. So it probably refers to the Hissy Island. This last line that talks about the Tide of Darkness, or the Mad Monk who spoke in strange tongues, both of these sentences refer to the Long Night's Oath artifact set and the events that transpired in their stories, but it also talks about a new potential calamity, which could be the involvement of the Fatui or the potential fall of the last moon. Well, and that's pretty much it. So let me just say that originally I planned to make a longer video that would focus on the Mary-Ann Sandrone theory, but eventually when this Welkin Moon event got released, I decided to make this video instead. It was a lot of looking around and talking about what comes to mind, so unfortunately I didn't bring any new mind-breaking lore or something like that, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. So take care and I'll see you in the next one.